present to you the impacts. It will be from the field. So from Anantapur, because the whole thing started in Anantapur, of how do you work in semi-arid areas, drought-prone areas. So I think you'll be very happy to see the kind of innovations happening in semi-arid areas. But there are also challenges. So which we'll expect some ideas from you and from experts in this group. Then we have farmers' testimonies from two districts, Kadapa and Guntur, as to how they've been able to raise crops throughout the year. And then we have experience from West Godavari district. And this is very important because this is a district where Green Revolution started in Andhra Pradesh. And this is one district where we have had a lot of difficulties in motivating farmers because they thought that the yields will go down in natural farming. And I don't want to break the suspense, but the West Godavari people will tell you that what has been the breakthrough that they got through PMDS, which was not happening with ZBNF alone. So, and also the resilience to floods. In fact, that has been a very serious issue this year. We have had heavy rains in the state, and Dr. Zakir will actually take us through how we've tested the resilience of when PMDS crops. Then we have the one district which has done remarkable work in scaling up. That means taking it to large number of farmers is Vijayanagaram district. And in tribal areas, actually 100% farmers who were to take up natural farming started it with PMDS. So that's one location where 100% farmers, this is the tribal areas of Vijayanagaram. So they have done that, and we are seeing some very impressive results that will be explained. And then we have time, based on the questions, we'll pose questions to Walter, and we will have reflections from Walter on what he has heard, and also about the challenges in going ahead. And then we'll expect concluding remarks from our panelists, and also guests who have joined from different continents, different countries, as to their takeaways. So with this, I'll now request Walter for his opening remarks.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vijay. And yes, look, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining. Look, we've been in this journey together with Vijay now directly for, well, about 2 years in terms of discussion and then visit and then the follow-up. And it's actually quite fundamental globally, because if you go back to where we started perhaps 50 years ago, and of course we had the Green Revolution, we realized that we've got to actually meet the food needs of humanity. But of course, at the same time, we had the Stockholm 1972 Earth Summit, and really the ecological imperatives to do that in a sustainable way. And we were very successful with the Green Revolution, of course, saying, yes, we can increase food production by, in a sense, irrigation and fertilizer and breeding innovations, science. And at the same time, we were sort of recognizing there were very major consequences and limits, particularly in terms of soil degradation, the nutritional integrity of that food, but also some of these bigger climate consequences of our impact on the landscape. And so a whole lot of scientists for the last 20, 30 years particularly have been looking at, okay, well, where are the opportunities to rebalance this system? How do we go beyond the Green Revolution to look at these regenerative ecological balances in our agriculture, in our food production? And of course, we've been working on that, and in a sense, it's all going back to nature to see, okay, well, look, how did nature create these balances? What are the processes that govern them, and what can we learn, and how do we actually implement them better in our agriculture to achieve these balances and these sustainable outcomes. So it was really quite exciting. I mean, we've been working in this space for about 20 years, very actively in Australia, looking at regenerative agriculture. With Jehne and others around the world, we've been then looking at global examples. But 12 months ago, 18 months ago, when we had the opportunity to start working with Vijay, it was very exciting because here was the same challenges, but it was being implemented practically at scale through what was then the zero budget natural farming approach that Vijay was using. So when we came 12 months ago to Andhra Pradesh to have a look at this and to talk with Vijay and the farmers, it was very impressive. And both in terms of what was happening on the ground, the social organizations of all those self-help groups of women's farmers, the farmer field manual training programs, the mentoring. So the actual inertia and enthusiasm and innovation on the ground was very impressive. But then also we looked at some of these technical innovations, breakthroughs actually that Vijay had instigated with pre-monsoon dry seeding. You know, how we could sow regions and actually meet that challenge, which was really fundamental globally, that Vijay raised. How do we have agriculture that is 365 days of the year green, rather than being 2/3 red, you know, dry, barren land, degrading, and only having crops for a quarter of the time or a third of the time. And so that pre-monsoon dry seeding cropping system became actually a very, very key focus. We looked at the science, substantiated, okay, what was going on? How come these plants were able to grow in what other people conventionally would have sort of said are arid conditions, which they shouldn't be able to grow in, and yet the evidence that they were. And I think having substantiated what's going on, the processes, that opened up a whole new world in terms of how can these processes be applied now globally to regenerate degraded area, to regenerate seasonally arid areas, and provide food production and security in those environments. And so I think it's actually a profoundly important global opportunity now to use these natural processes to go forward. And actually this workshop today, let's look at all the background, all the details, and then I'd like to sort of look at the end of it in summing up, but also saying, look, where do we take this forward? You know, what are the significance of that in terms of climate change, of regreening, rehydrating, cooling regions, but perhaps more importantly, how do we actually use this to provide food security, social stability, and actually meet those sustainable development goals of the United Nations, or actually all of humanity, and actually provide Antonio Guterres basically with the natural climate solutions, the sustainable development goals solutions that humanity needs urgently. So look, as an introduction, I hope that sort of covers it, but like I'd like to actually come back at the end and really look at, okay, what do we do in terms of extending this to farmers? How do we extend it over wider areas? But then in a sense, how do we also make this relevant practically, profitably for industrial agriculture, so we do have that transition beyond the Green Revolution. So if I basically leave that initial discussions here now, and then come back later on in our workshop and pull those threads together.
Thank you, Walter. I also welcome Arvind Padi, Amanda, Atul Bagai, Jimena, and I also see friends from Masipag, Philippines have joined. So hearty welcome. I now, proceeding further, I now request Anne-Sophie. In fact, I must thank Anne-Sophie for actually making this happen. So facilitating Walter's visit. So Anne-Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Vijay Garu.
And you must speak in Telugu. You must speak in Telugu. That's the demand.
Andariki namaskaram. Na peru Anne-Sophie. FAO lo panchestunnanu. That's okay, Vijay? Am I losing my accent or am I still doing decently?
No, you're doing very well.
Okay, I wish COVID will let me come back to Andhra Pradesh faster than I actually can. And I do miss our field work, but it's great to be in close contact almost on a daily basis with the team in Andhra. FAO has been working closely with the APCNF program for over 3 years now. I was personally based in India for 2 years, 2017 to 2019, and spent about a week, a month on average in Andhra Pradesh working with the program. And for FAO, as you probably know, FAO supports agroecology as a vision that can lead us to the achievement of sustainable development goals as part of a family of sustainable agriculture approaches. FAO has developed principles for agroecology. We consider natural farming to be a part of this family of agroecological approaches. FAO has a scaling up initiative with many partners, many of whom are around the virtual table today. And that's has one of 3 pilot countries for the scaling up agroecology initiative globally is Andhra Pradesh and community managed natural farming. And that's because this is not only is there immense work being done on side by side with farmers to support transitions to regenerative systems, but also at scale. And that's one of the remarkable achievements, I think, of Vijay and his team and the farmers who are committed into the program is that it's growing very, very quickly, and there's many lessons to be learned in terms of a management system to scale sustainable innovations and how we work alongside farmers, how we put in place incentives, how we support farmer innovation. And really, regenerative farming is an immense opportunity, I think. Basically, it gives us possibilities of not only producing adequate and nutritious food that we need to feed the growing global population, but also doing so while not only doing no harm to the environment, but actually restoring our ecosystems. And making farming and integrated farming approach and food systems a part of the solution for our existential crisis around the climate change challenge and food security, poverty, but also social stability. And I think drylands are and we will hear a lot about drylands and semi-arid areas today and various forms of drylands because that's one of the focus for our webinar today. They are about 40% of Earth's surface, and they're home to 1 billion people. If we don't address degradation in drylands, whether it's highly arid, semi-arid, dry, subhumid, etc., if we don't address that, how are we going to meet sustainable development goals? How will we meet our climate change challenge? And maintain, if we continue degrading our soils, we'll degrade many other things and the social fabric of society and our peace and stability as well. We are celebrating World Soil Day this week with many events around the world and policymakers drawing the spotlight on the importance of soils. And I think Andhra Pradesh is giving us a great example of how we can work on addressing multiple challenges, starting from the ground up, starting from the soil beneath our feet to address erosion, to address food security, to address landscape restoration, to address livelihoods of men and women farmers. Our work in APCNF at FAO has been focusing on a different number of things. I would say first if you wish, an extension stream. We've worked with the program on co-innovation with farmers. How do we support the program in its already very, very active work at training women and women farmers in understanding the principles behind agroecology and soil health and soil restoration. And we use farmer field schools, which is one of the approaches that FAO spearheaded 30 years ago, because agroecological approaches, regenerative farming, are probably more complex than using a preset calendar of inputs, and for farmers to really embrace it, we found it's immensely useful for them to understand the underpinnings, the ecological literacy that they need to make good decisions. So farmer field schools in the program have been working beautifully. We started in Guntur district, and I want to greet the DPM Guntur, who is here with us today, and all the DPMs that I see in the list, who then scaling up farmer field schools. We are doing training now, master trainers from inside the program. The second stream, and Didi has been great in helping us build new exercises for understanding soil health and soil and water cycles for farmer field schools. The second stream is a macroeconomic or policy stream. We're working with our colleagues from CIRAD and APPI Foundation and Government of Andhra Pradesh on a foresight study to understand the macroeconomic implications of a potential transition of the farmers in the state to APCNF. What would happen if all of the farmers in the states would transition to this? Where would the inputs, the natural inputs, come from? What would be the implications in terms of food security, in terms of yields? And what would be the implication of a sort of continuation trend of the current agriculture model? So we are building scenarios backed with huge data sets with a group of experts from India, especially, but also outside, some of whom are with us today, from civil society and farmers and academia, research policy, etc., to advise government of Andhra Pradesh on the potential implications and pathways for agriculture in the state. The third work stream is around policy dialogue and knowledge sharing with other governments and in policy fora of FAO. APCNF is probably the largest agroecological initiative worldwide today at the scale in terms of numbers of farmers. And so there's a lot of effort being put also in producing videos, policy dialogues in the Committee on World Food Security during World Food Day, that was a few weeks ago, to share with other governments who are on transition pathways to agroecology and share with APCNF what others are doing. And the fourth, let's say, work stream, and that's where I come to the work with Walter, is a sort of science work stream where we are trying to generate with the APCNF team an understanding of the scientific underpinnings of what is happening. There's a lot of debate about natural farming in India and outside on agroecology. What is the science? Do we have enough data? There's a lot of a very contested field of scientific knowledge. So we need to continue building this evidence. And by evidence doesn't mean only scientific data. It means also farmer evidence that has a lot of legitimacy because they are walking the talk and they are adopting. So that has to tell us something. But where Walter has been brilliant is not only because he has inspired a lot of the innovations that we'll hear about today from Vijay watching his lectures online, but that he continues, and that's the power of our connected society, really. But that we were happy enough to bring him with Didi to Andhra Pradesh to work with the team late last year, about exactly a year ago. And basically that Walter and Didi have continued to provide elements to back up scientifically what farmers are testing and validating in the field. I think I will stop here because this is what we will hear about. For us at FAO, this has potentially huge significance for how we can restore drylands. I really look forward to having this really thorough update and hearing from the team in the field of the latest result of the PMDS, the pre-monsoon dry sowing. I think this is really a huge potential and lessons. And in fact, we'll be organizing series of webinars with other countries, also in Latin America and in Africa, to share, and a global one at FAO level, hopefully with Walter, to share findings with a broader community and generate more debate. I will stop at that and very much look forward to hearing from the news from the field.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. And I wish you were here so that you would have spoken all this in Telugu. Thank you.
Sure. Work in progress.
I also take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Dinesh Balam from Odisha, Director Agriculture, my dear friend Sujit Mishra, and Sampath, and Dr. Jagdish, who again is a very, very interested and very committed partner of APCNF. And I have to welcome Chris Collins from University of Reading. And I think I see that Zdravka has joined. I don't know if I pronounced her name correctly, but welcome, Zdravka. So now I must, ask the person who is responsible for actually bringing Walter's lecture to me. So Didi also means elder sister in Hindi. So our elder sister will speak now. Didi.
Thank you, Vijay. I am just delighted and honored to be part of this project and to be here today. What Vijay is referring to is that Walter and I teach an annual conference in the United States, in Vermont, the Soil Sponge Strategic Gathering. And we post the lectures online, and through the magic of the internet, Vijay found those. And at the same time, interestingly, I had gotten in touch with Suzanne and Sophie at the Farmer Field School program and said, I'm developing some curriculum on understanding soil health and watershed function. And they said, oh, this is exactly our kind of thing. And somehow that triangle of information came together last year so that we were, both Walter and I were able to be brought over both to help understand and unpack some of the science behind the successes that you're having, and also to develop training materials, as Anne-Sophie spoke to. So, and I'll say that one of the things that people might be interested in the background is that my organization, Land and Leadership Initiative, is developing, and we have started to post fact sheets with huge amounts of citations. And I thank my colleague Torsten Arnold for helping with that project. Then right now we have one on the science behind 365 days screen cover that I think will be very helpful as people try to understand why this is such a profound change that's happening in Andhra Pradesh. I want to speak for a moment about what I found moving about being part of this project. For me, and Vijay and I had a webinar before I came to India and saw anything. And at the end of that webinar, another close colleague of mine, Peter Donovan, he is the founder of the Soil Carbon Coalition, and for many years I was the president. He called me right after the webinar and he had tears in his voice. And he said, this is what we've been talking about. And I said, I know. That in the United States, we have struggled for many, many, many years to get a widespread adoption of soil health principles on the land. And for a variety of reasons, but we had a vision of something that would be not top down, that would bring the intelligence and the creativity and the experimentation and the coordination of farmers from very different backgrounds together. Something personal to me that would be bring in women's wisdom and intelligence as a key piece of leadership, and something that would really get at all of these soil health principles that people are talking about around the world to grow a functional landscape. So what I've seen with this project is, yes, it has been spread through women's self-help economic groups, which were really goes back in Vijay's history a long time, that he not only, he created that foundational infrastructure that made this project possible by backing and supporting the women's self-help group movement long ago. The second thing that has been so impressive is the incredible organization there, that the communication system for information to flow, for projects to be reported back. Walter and I can make or anybody who is part of this project can make a suggestion of, have you tried grazing the cover crops? Have you tried this? And within a week or two, we start getting pictures back in the morning of, here, we're trying it. And not just somebody is trying it, but 10,000 people are trying it. So this is, it's really like a dream come true of the kind of relaxed, joyful experimentation, that not you have to get a big grant and you have to fill out hundreds of pages of something, but just do it. So the fact that this is not a top-down approach, that it really is a grassroots initiative, and seeing people from very different backgrounds all working together in the field to understand things, to teach each other, to learn. A lot of playing and games as part of the Farmer Field School approach, which is very close to my heart. And that it's optional. You know, it's not a law. It's not coming out directly out of policy, though we hope that policy will change as it understands the profound impact that this is having on an entire state in Andhra Pradesh and increasingly in other places. It respects the intelligence and integrity of the people who are putting it into practice. People are allowed to experiment on as much or little land as they want. They can try doing it with different crops. It's not a prescriptive approach, and they will adapt it as it works. And the other thing that I love is the photographs that I get in the mornings through our WhatsApp group of birds nesting in crops, of interesting insects that nobody has seen before, the diversity of plants and crops and seeds that I see in the photos, and that it's really bringing out the natural beauty of life in this project, which I often say that in the US, the farmers who have adopted soil health, they may have started it for economic reasons, but then they see this diversity coming back and they fall in love with the land. So just to finish, an article of mine came out yesterday in an economic publication, and it's called Other Species Are Essential Workers Whose Economies Enfold Our Own. And the key piece there is that this soil sponge infrastructure, that is what we are going to be seeing, we're seeing happening on the landscape, that can soak up water, that can hold rainwater, that can provide the water for plants to transpire and cool the entire landscape. This cannot actually be built by humans. This needs a biological workforce. And for a biological workforce to be successful, we need the same kinds of conditions that we need for a human workforce to be successful. And that is welcome and respect for a diverse workforce, food and water year round, And that food comes from the plant root exudates, feeding it, and the water from the soil sponge that they build. Protection from heat and storms. And this protection in this project is coming from the mulch layer, from the plant cover crop, but also from the structural cellular integrity of the plants that we'll see, I'm sure, some pictures of before and after storms. Protection from toxic chemicals. Any workforce needs that. And this is a key piece of this initiative, is to get rid of the pesticides and biocides. And then the last one is self-organizing labor to make its own adaptive decisions. We need to trust the biology to do the right thing. So to me, this project is not only doing this with the land, but also with the people. And that's the beauty of this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Didi. Thank you so much. And we're actually looking forward that you and Walter can come back and, pick up the threads. Before I invite Max, I would also like to welcome Sarah from University of Reading, my friend Milion from AFSA, Amrita from the Agroecology Fund, Dr. Poyamoli, expert on the Foresight study, and Andrew Crosby from Geneva. So it's truly a one world conference, but very happily people have joined this, and I'm really grateful to all of you for taking out your time. Now I'd like to invite Max from New Zealand. Walter has been associated with Walter. So Max, over to you. You have to unmute, Max.
Is that okay now?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay. You're all away. I'm a little bit of an imposter. I see that I have the wrong name on the my decal, so I apologize to that gentleman for anything that I might say. Look, I'm also feel like a little bit of an imposter, and alongside India, it's 1.3 billion people alongside our mere 5 million. And so at that point, I have to say thank you very, very much for taking this initiative. For those of us that have been for some years now, for our sins, have worked on the soils, worked on the politics of soils, and I am a farmer, and we try to farm with soils first as our mantra. That just means is that before we do anything, we consider the impact on the soils first before you make a decision. That's all that means to us. And so I'm very, very grateful for this program that you and Walter and Didi and have got together. It's a beautiful example for us. And while we're small, we do share some things, of course, with India, not the least our love of cricket, which we seem to spend a bit of time talking to each other about. But we also share the Indian Ocean, and some of us are very, very cognizant of Walter's work and trying to, if you like, upgrade the understandings of climate change to that hydrology. And so that's a very important one that you are doing with so many people. It is frankly gorgeous to watch so many people at ground level making these changes that are going to affect the rest of us all around the globe so significantly. Here in New Zealand, we have been struggling with our response to climate change. We have a government that is trying, that is putting the effort in. There is the same conflict that you people have with your agriculture between the outcome of the green revolution, the downside of the way in which we have approached nutrient into our landscapes, and the downside on our water quality, the downside on our food quality, etc. So we're all faced with that as as a science issue. And so that links us. In New Zealand, we've had this government has been in for one term now of 3 years, and during that time, it has launched a program called He Waka Eka Noa, and that's the primary sector in New Zealand has agreed to an action partnership, which has been politically a little difficult. I've watched a little to see that you have similar issues in India between the sort of, what should be subsidized and what should not be, and where we should go. And so this is a very essential conversation that, of course, we've had with Walter, and we were lucky enough to have Walter join us in New Zealand, and we did a trip together from one end to the other, which is I think we did about 1,000 miles or something down to New Zealand. And New Zealand is just a little rock out in the Pacific Ocean. Yes, we are close to Australia, but it is another 1,200 miles to fly across the ocean. Our nearest neighbour is 1,000 miles in the other direction at Tonga, and so you get the idea that we are quite isolated. In fact, one part of our rohi is the Antarctic, and so that some of us have a big interest in what happens down there, and we're very grateful for Walter to produce that beautiful question: can whales save the Antarctic? Yeah. And I suggest that you all look at that question, because it doesn't take long before you look at, if you accept that thesis as a possibility, suddenly what happens back on land? Well, the cows become the whales of the land, and the effluent that they produce is part of us, not a problem. It's all a question of how much and when and what's in it. And so thank you, Walter. I'm very grateful for where we're going. We also, in New Zealand, we have worked away for the first 3 years on a document for a vision on New Zealand agriculture. It's called Fit for a Future World, and it's supposed to be accelerating our economic potential. And I think when you look at it, you will see that there's been a big shift for the way our attitude towards the longevity of our agriculture, for the sustainability of it, for this modern word of regenerative farming, which I struggle to give a full definition to, but it's a far better word than extractive, and better than sustainable. So I'm very happy to embrace. We are very happy to embrace the idea of regenerative farming in that context. So we also are very pleased to watch this program. Didi spoke of the science and not being top down. So there's a big movement in New Zealand which Walter helped us with enormously. We went and visited we went up into the bush, and we visited the people who have been here a long time, Māori, and we many of us are taking a very strong view that if you want to move forward with this kind of discussion and understanding, that you need to go to the people who've been observing what's been going on the most. For a start, talk to your farmers, because they're the ones that are seeing the changes and they understand the changes. And you'll be surprised, in most countries, in most places, when you go to people who are actually got their hands in the soil, that you can start to get your clues to where to go. If you want to go further into that, you will go to the indigenous people, and you will get their perspective. And so the science, we've just finished a project which there is a report. I have sent it to Vijay today. It is this one, Waka. You won't be able to read the title entirely, but it's the Waka Ora Ngā Whenua Whama, and it's utilising the Māori and Western science to protect and restore soil on rural farms. And what we looked for in that was the connections between our indigenous folk who have been making these long-term observations and do have the concept of katiakitanga, which is the idea of looking after landscape for very long periods for future generations. ensconced in it. And unsurprisingly, we found a lot of very good Western science that fitted alongside very good observation of long-term understandings. And so if anyone's interested in that report, we have that link. That was just, it was our way of starting this, or of continuing that thread and that train of thought. And again, I thank you very much, Walter. Walter came and stood with us, with the people of Tuhui, who live in the middle of the North Island, and in a forested area, the largest lump of forested area still left in New Zealand. Sorry, and in New Zealand, and we watched as we went up dawn into the clouds, and we watched the clouds rise out of the bush and into the sky, and that has opened for us a complete understanding of the interconnectedness of the whole hydrocycle, water cycle, and those understandings were just shared by the old folk and Walter. It was a joy to be with. So it's a complicated thing that I'm trying to say, but not really. You folk are all onto it, and we're very grateful. And we'll take it easy on you in cricket for now. Thank you.
I'm sure Kohli is waiting to, come to New Zealand and play there.
Yes.
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much. And you've given us a very, very interesting perspective. Yeah, now is Phil available? I don't know if Phil has any idea. I don't see him. Phil, are you there?
I did not reach him. I don't know if he might have gotten on.
He's here. Phil Lee is
He's
here.
there.
Yes.
He's there.
Oh, Phil. Can you please?
Unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, good morning, Vijay. How are you? Hello, Walter.
Hi.
Didi.
Greetings, Phil.
Hi,
Good
Didi.
morning. Good evening. I don't know what time it is.
Hi, Phil.
1:30 in the morning.
Phil, yeah, I would like some opening remarks from you.
Yes, Vijay. It was it's pretty amazing what Didi and Walter did when they went over to India and joined with the PMDS. We've had a great result, I think. All the views I've seen on WhatsApp's been some stunning videos. It's been a great effort, and just briefly, good morning, and Sophie as well.
Hi,
yeah.
Phil.
How are you? Yeah,
Great.
just
Great to see you.
really stunning to watch and see how this has evolved, Vijay. It's absolutely a credit to you and your team, and especially to my team too, as Walter and Didi as well. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay. So what I would like to do is, Walter, I will give a report card on what has happened over the last 1 year, and where this innovation has taken us, and what are our expectations on how do we move forward. This is a yes. So as I mentioned, it's like we are celebrating 1 year of visit of Walter to India. And this is where our program is. We started with 40,000 farmers in 2016. And this year, we plan to cover 1 million farmers and farm workers. So around 700,000 farmers and 350,000 landless farm workers. So the support to them is in the form of nutrition gardens, homestead gardens. And we are supported by government funds, philanthropy. Azim Premji Philanthropy is providing tremendous support to our work. And this year we have also borrowed, the state government has borrowed money from the KFW Bank to take this forward. And over the last 4 years, we have seen that our costs have come down, yields have improved, and soil has improved, and human health has improved. But this is the universal principles of natural farming that we follow. The first and foremost is the soil to be covered with crops 365 days of the year. And this was not possible till the PMDS breakthrough came. So now we can very confidently say that across the different agroecological zones in Andhra Pradesh, we can keep the soil covered with the living root 365 days of the year and with diverse crops. And this is the big breakthrough that we have achieved. Our other principle is minimal disturbance of soils. This is taking some time because this is a big mindset change, but that is our principle, that we should not disturb the soil. Integrating animals into farming, then biostimulants, which I'll explain briefly. Increasing the amount and diversity of organic residues using indigenous seeds, and pest management through better agronomic practices and botanical extracts, and a strict no to synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and weedicides. And these are the biological inoculum. One is for seed treatment. This is called the Jivamrita. It is a biostimulant which is prepared from cow dung, cow urine, uncontaminated soil, jaggery, pulses flour. It's mixed and fermented. It's not a fertilizer, it's a stimulant. And of course, the breakthrough, pre-monsoon dry sowing seeding breakthrough, which came from Walter's lectures. So Walter, you remember this? Your lecture in 2016?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
No.
So,
Yes.
so this is what started me on. And so that is DD and Walter and Vermont, November 30th, 2016. And this is the two lectures, 2 days lectures by Walter, which really, I would say, changed my world, changed my thinking about this whole issue. And I really like the way Walter puts it, that is so easy, A, B, C, and then he adds a D in the end. So this is the inspiration behind the work that we have done. And I must also confess, I already confessed to Walter that the inspiration came and my action came on a little improper understanding. So it was a mistake which got me into this, because we have a principle in zero budget natural farming which talks of WAPSA, that means soil aeration, which is a result of soil biology improving. So I assume that this WAPSA is also responsible for providing water to the roots. So of course, Walter learned later from Walter that that was a mistaken understanding by me, but it was that mistake which led to this action. But yes, thanks to the principles of natural farming, we could see that water infiltration had increased, water holding capacity had increased. But what we learned from Walter and what changed my worldview was about the rivers of water in the air, that you have water in the air up to 50,000 parts per million. And essentially, our effort was through regenerative agriculture, can plants harness this water, and can the soil biology enable them to, enable the seeds to germinate. So we still don't know the full science, and that is in fact, what we'll be taking up with help of Walter. And this is this young boy, one of those 11 pioneers who started this work in May 2018. You can see hot summer. And in this dry field, we did the application of the biostimulant. We did about 3-4 times. And in fact, here I have to acknowledge the role of Mr. Lakshman Naik, who will be also presenting. And it was he who really took this forward with this first breakthrough. And we had a mix of seeds, 10, 12, 15 kinds of seeds. You can see here the seeds are being broadcast. the seeds are treated first with Bijamrita, the seed treatment inoculum, and then we covered it with mulch. And this is the rainfall, hardly any rainfall that year. And nobody in the village had actually taken up a crop. And this boy was seen as a fool for taking this risk. But this crop lasted for 365 days of the year. And this was our, breakthrough for the next year. And actually, we got into it without fully understanding the science. But then we said that from now onwards, we are actually introducing 2 more seasons into the calendar year. We call this as the pre-monsoon sowing, starts from April and goes on till October. If there are some dry spells or there's not enough rain for people to take crops. And the second one actually starts when the first crop is taken and there's no irrigation facility. We call it this Rabi dry sowing. The sowing can take place anytime between November to March. And this is Walter's, Anne Sophie and Didi's visit to Anantapur, November 2019. They visited, this is the method demonstration. They could see how these inoculums are prepared and visiting the fields in, yes, different locations. And this is one field which is a very interesting field where the the farmer had got an amazing crop in spite of very low rainfall. And Walter's lectures in Anantapur, Guntur. There's also a lecture he gave in Delhi in Niti Aayog. And I'll not go into this because Walter is here, so he's the right person. So we had a 4 days brainstorming, and I think that was the most, I cherish that 4 days in Guntur. So from morning till evening, we learned so much from Walter. And then we figured out that there are many, many sources of water. And the biggest contribution, biggest learning which came from Walter's visit was how do you combine the seed with the biostimulant so that, the germination can improve. So we changed our practices based on Walter's visit. And so this year, in 2020, we have 100,000 farmers who took up this initiative. This is the, yeah, you can see here, we started with 11 farmers in 2018. This was the experimental batch. Then in the ensuing winter season, we could motivate around 1,000 plus 1,400 farmers. But next summer, we had 7,000 farmers. And then in the winter, we had another 5,000. So from 7,000 farmers, we could take it to 100,000 farmers this year. And for the remainder of the year, our DPMs, district staff are confident that they can add another 50,000 farmers. And next summer, we are very ambitious. We want to take it to 300,000 farmers. So we want any farmer practicing natural farming to start with PMDS. And yeah, this is the district-wise breakup. And in fact, one district which has done outstandingly well is Vizianagaram district will have almost 20,000 farmers. Almost 1/5 of the entire state achievement came from one district. And so we'll have the district manager saying how they managed to scale up. And what are the impacts? And first and foremost is the farmers are liberated from the vagaries of the monsoon. And what seems like a miracle to me, and which we are seeing in practice on the ground, that a farmer in semi-arid, rain-fed areas has the confidence that she or he can take not just one crop, but 3 crops in a year. To me, this is the most outstanding result of this innovation. And farmers across the state, irrigated areas, hilly areas, single crop areas, are now taking 3 crops in a year. And we are seeing that incomes are doubling just through this initiative. There's a reduced migration from villages to urban areas. And crop biodiversity, we were actually struggling with crop biodiversity. But since crop biodiversity is a prerequisite in PMDS, the same emphasis is spilling over to the crop biodiversity in the main crops. So thus all the three crops in the season are now showing biodiversity. Still in the beginning, I mean, we still have to go a long way, but this is one important breakthrough that we got, that from a 60, 70 years focus on monocrop, we are now seeing farmers incorporating 10 to 15 crops in their fields. And this is a very important breakthrough. But we're also seeing that we are getting higher yields of the main crops. Then we are providing farmers regular income throughout the year. The pest problem has reduced, water requirement has reduced, and household nutrition has improved because the crop biodiversity also includes vegetable crops. And this is, of course, the above ground changes, but the below ground changes are also extremely outstanding. So there's improved resilience to dry spells, floods, and cyclones. Is more nutritious, is preferred by cattle, thereby milk yields have increased. Degraded and fallow lands are being brought to life. Cropping intensity is increased. And there's a greater acceptance of zero budget natural farming among the farmers once they see the impact of PMDS. We're also seeing that when I'm explaining our work to other states and countries, they're very impressed by the promise of PMDS. And of course, as I see, its biggest promise is going to be the impact on climate change. I'll not describe this because I'll leave it to Walter to explain to us how this is connected with climate change. So I'll conclude my presentation here. This has really changed our world. The way we were doing things, the kind of impact this has had is really unimaginable. I don't think my presentation does justice to the kind of change in our mindset, the confidence of a farmer that, otherwise the farmer's only choice was to migrate if one crop failed. And the same farmer now is able to see that they're getting 3 crops. So now the first innovation that we would like to present is the Anantapur district. What is possible through this initiative in semi-arid areas? So I would request our DPM Lakshman Nayak, to make this presentation. And Walter, even though I started with a wrong understanding, I was able to correct it in the middle.
No, nothing is wrong. It is all just observation and looking at nature. And we'll come back to that because it's nature that's our teacher. We're just the innocent observers. And as long as our minds are open, it's just marvelous what we can learn and how we can actually use nature to regenerate. But we'll come back onto that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, can I ask Lakshman Nayak? And I also take the opportunity to welcome our dear friend Lee from Nairobi. Yes, Nayak.
Sir, good morning, sir.
You have to finish in 7 minutes. So,
okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Whatever is the miraculous journey. Yeah.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Good morning to Walter, sir, and Didi, madam. They are well appreciated last year to me. Our district work, they are seeing and very well. Now this year, based on our COVID situation, lockdown is the prevailing in the March in the all over India. At that time, our migrated farmers poor farmers they are returned to their homes, but they do not raise any crop last 10 years because of the regular droughts. At that time, the farmers are motivated. We are rising this year in their rocky slopy and fallow land, sir. Previously, that land we are converted as based on PMDS work. We are applying the Ghanajivamrita and mixed crop with pulses and millets and oil seeds previously, and make it soil cover in the April, May, sir. Afterward, we are going to the main crop, groundnut crop, intercrop with red ground, another 10 to 15 crops with crop biodiversity. And
Next slide. Next slide.
This is the farming situation in Anandpur, sir. Black cotton soil and poor red soil and sandy soils. We are red clay soils also, sir. Next.
Naik, we're next and చెప్తూ ఉండండి so that
sir, this one is the red gram, sir. Every 7 lines groundnut, and another one is the red gram, and red gram is the intercrop, sir. Next.
1 second, just go back.
Sir.
Walter, basically this 3 months is PMDS.
Yes.
And then this remaining time, depending on the rain, so they have got groundnut as the main crop, but then they also have on the borders the millet crops, then a pulse crop, and also vegetable crops. So again, crop biodiversity in the main crop. And November onwards, when people really can't take any crop there, they have gone in for vegetable crop. So you can see here 365 days of the year in a semi-arid area, there is some crop or the other.
No, excellent.
Next.
Yeah,
next. Sir, this is the seed dribbling, sir.
Yeah.
Farmers, this is seed dribbling, sir, and this is the slopey land, sir, shallow soil. We are farmed across the slope, the furrows and the ridges, sir. We control the runoff also, sir. Soil erosion control and runoff, we are reduced the runoff. Entire rainfall is the percolate into the soil profile.
Quick.
Next.
Yeah, this you already mentioned. Go to the next.
Sir. This is the slopey land, sir. Entire land is the with grass, sir. Previously, this land we are making for the PMDS, sir. Next. This is seed, sir. Groundnut seed and other pulse seeds are here. All pulse seeds and we are mixed and making as a intercrop, sir.
1 minute, Naik, 1 minute. Walter, you can see here. Walter, Naik, 1 minute. Walter, you can see here they've used whatever mulch they could get. They didn't wait for any peanut.
Yes.
Whatever is locally available, and that is the innovation of Mr. Naik, that we didn't allow that to be a constraint, and a lot of prosopis, whatever they could get, they are using it as mulch.
Yes, and of course, this is one of the frontiers, because as long as we've got organic matter of some type that can be broken down, you see, we can start these metabolic water processes. The question now also comes, how much mulch do we need to get that started? And these are, in a sense, innovations where we're going to go forward and progressively refine these options.
Yeah. Next.
This is the, that one is the mulch, sir. This is the ridge and furrow making, sir. Next. This one is the Bijamrita with seed treatment, sir. Next. This one is seed, sir. They are pelletization, sir. In the in the March, April, we are not assured to the rainfall, sir, because of the seed is in the soil up to rainfall, little rainfall. We are making the seed balls, sir. Pelletization.
Yeah, Naik, go back to this slide. Yeah. So this seed pelletization is a big innovation. So even if it doesn't rain for a month or 2 months, also nothing happens to the seed. We have seen them germinate. And so this again, the seed ball seed pelletization is an innovation for Anantapur. Yeah, next night.
Next. This is the pelletization making, sir.
Right.
This one
Dibbling,
is
seed
the
dibbling.
procuring the small mulch material from the groundnut mill. Next. This is the entire surrounding the plant. We are making as a in the furrows, sir. We
Right.
put the entire collecting any plant material. We can make as a mulch material, sir. Next. This one is germinated groundnut, and this one is the they are second time also they are put the mulch material.
Okay.
Next. Next. This is the biodiversity, sir. This one is the very luxuriant growth with the high potential crop grown, sir. Very high vigor, sir. Very entire leaf area is the no pest, sir. Fungal or insect pest is there is no. Only beneficial insects are appearing, sir. Next. This one is the parts, sir. Next. This one is the rhizobium nodules, sir. Root nodules with the rhizobium bacteria. Next. This is the soil, moisturized soil, sir, in the PMDS field. Next. This is the earthworm, sir. Next. This one is the our mulching and the non-mulching area, sir. This is the difference between the PMDS and the ZP&F. Based on mulching and non-mulching area, this one is the difference, sir.
A huge difference.
Huge, yeah.
Same day of sowing, sir.
Right.
Next. Next.
Next, please. ఇంకేముందా?
Next. Sir. This is this one is
Previous slide. Previous slide.
Back. This one is the luxuriant growth, sir. Very luxuriant growth without any pest and disease, sir. Next. Next. This one is this first one is the PMDS. Only 5% incident of the Tika leaf spot, sir. And this chemical one is the 70 to 90% affected, sir. Only ZPNF is the 10 to 15% affected, sir. Next. We are addressing mulch constraint in mulch material. We are growing drumstick and windbreak, sir. Around the field, we are making Sesbania as a windbreak, sir. Every half foot one Sesbania seed is dibbling and raised, sir, for windbreak and mulch material also. In between the field, every 6 feet one drumstick plant is this year raised, sir. Next.
1 second. Walter, this is the innovation in Anantapur.
Yes.
They are raising these fast growing, Moringa, Sesbania,
Yes, trees, yes.
So that there is enough, availability of mulch when they expand the PMDS area.
And the drumsticks are the mounds that you're growing them on, or what are the drumstick?
This is a Moringa. So
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
every 6 feet, it's grown. And on the borders, we have Sesbania, again, both as a windbreak, but also we have
as a green
tremendous
manure
biomass.
mulch crop. Yes,
as a mulch. So this is basically mulch production so that we can cover larger areas, because mulch is turning out to be a constraint in the semi-arid areas.
Yeah, and actually it's critically important both for stopping or reducing the evaporation, the desiccation, but also, as we said, harvesting moisture at nighttime from the humid airflows. So the integrated agroforestry is actually critical because it's creating that whole new environment instead of that desiccated arid area. So yes, Moanaga, Sesbania, Leucaena, acacias, there's enormous amount of opportunities to integrate trees into agriculture in these shelterwood strategies. And of course, the same applies with your prosopis, which we see as a weed, but in fact, it's a very critical pioneer protective plant that we can use to help regenerate those systems.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir,
I think we can stop here. I think
sir, this one is the relay crop is raised in the PM days plant, sir. We make a ring spadder, sir. We will make it 1 foot of the area for seeding or planting of the vegetables, sir.
Okay.
This one.
Sure. Okay, Nike. I think we're running out of time.
Brinjal, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can stop sharing the screen of Anantapur. Yeah. Walter, we have a problem, to see that soil is not disturbed. So the last innovation that Nayak was presenting was to ensure that the soil is not disturbed, and then through that breaking the mulch, we could do seed dibbling. So the idea is, this is turning out to be a little difficult because ploughing is such an integral part of farming, and that's the problem that we are seeing.
Yes, and of course, it's the exposure of the soil and the organic matter in the soil to oxidation after ploughing. But look, there's no problems when you're seed dibbling, like putting the seed in. Of course, you can have micro disturbance in that little spot. I suppose what we're trying to avoid is a wholesale oxidation of carbon and desiccation with broadacre ploughing. But there's no troubles, going in with a spade and disturbing micro spots to establish plants. Because, the plant, especially once the soil gets a bit more resilient, it's got more than enough capacity to withstand that.
Yeah, thank you. Now, thank you, Nayak, because yours is the most difficult district. To bring about a change in that district is most difficult. What I will do is, because of shortage of time, thank you. I'll ask West Godavari district to make their presentation. West Godavari is unique, Walter, because this is a district where Green Revolution started. So this is also a district blessed with a lot of water. So you saw one district where there is absolutely no water, and this district is one where there's abundance of water.
Right.
So West Godavari district, please put up the presentation by West Godavari. We're starting with the crop yield results, right? Yes. So who's making the presentation? Please make it quick because we also need to have a break. West Godavari presentation, please.
Sir, good morning to all the great personalities and delegates in this conference. I'm Y. Nokarazu, the Agricultural Officer, West Godavari APC. Sir, regarding our district, as you said, our district is blessed with surplus irrigation water, both in the form of a delta canal system from a river delta system, and at the same time we are having groundwater, borewell irrigation, plenty of borewell irrigation also. Our major crop is paddy. Our system, the major system is paddy followed by paddy, occupying 9 months in the 12 months year, leaving at remaining 3 to 3.5 months vacant, a window. Definitely we are using that. Definitely our district is the largest fertilizer and as well as pesticide consuming district in our state. In this scenario, in this scenario, sir, the implementation of ZBN of natural farming methods in this paddy, our EVCs are said in earlier of this conference. Sir, in this district, we definitely the PMDS concept helped a lot, sir. Definitely, PMDS concept helped a lot, and with this PMDS concept, we filled the window of 3.5 months with dry sowing, pre-monsoon dry sowing and rabi dry sowing, sir. With that, we already almost 5,000 odd acres of land. We did this PMDS, sir, with 5,000 odd farmers. We have meticulously planned cluster-wise, unit-wise. We have selected each village one crop cutting experiment to know the impact of this, the actual impact of this PMDS, rather than natural farming. Already we have been practicing for the last 4 years, and at the same time the chemical farming. These three we took as treatments: chemical and just sole ZBNF and PMDS plus ZBNF. These three treatments we took, and we planned meticulously in each and every our cluster villages, that is 204 villages, 204 CCEs, crop cutting experiments, combining these three treatments, ZBNF, chemical, and ZBNF plus PMD. And we took very important parameters, plant physiological parameters.
అరే అందరు మ్యూట్ చేసుకోవాలండి. మన వీరేందర్, ప్లీజ్ మ్యూట్ ఎవ్రీవన్. యా, నౌ Nukaraju, please go ahead with the results quick.
Yes, sir.
Nukaraju, go ahead with the results.
We took parameters like very important plant physiological parameters: root length, shoot length, number of tillers per hill, number of effective tillers, 1,000 grain weight, and again at the end the actual yield. Our laid out procedure 5 into 5 25 square meter field, wet yield, dry yield, and finally number of bags. We took all these 10 parameters, and we have observed excellent results, excellent positive impact, excellent significant positive results from this PMDS. Next slide. Is here in all these parameters, the PMDS plus ZBNF is the best performing among all these three treatments. We did 41 CCEs in this. We took 41 CCEs data, sir, and the results at our we have statistically analyzed.
Next, quick, one by one.
Next.
Yeah.
First is the root length. Root length is significantly increased. Root length we have observed in PMDS ZBNF. The root length is very high compared to the ZBNF, ZBNF and chemical also. This is significantly high. Profuse root growth we observed, sir. This can be
22%. Just go by the percentage, how much higher it is. So, Walter, 22%, 22% root depth, extra root depth.
Yep.
Next.
No, got it.
Hello.
Yep.
Sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Shoot length is less versus chemical. Yeah. Next. These are the root shoot ratios.
Next.
This is the key thing: root shoot ratios, because that's
shoot
your
length,
resilience. Yep.
Nukaraju, please. What చూస్తున్నారు? He's observing the slide.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
So Walter, you can see here 0.23 versus 0.17.
Yes.
Serpentity.
Yes, sir. We observed higher root to shoot ratio in PMDS, sir, which is actually required for a good yield from any plant. Next. The number of tillers per hill, sir. This is also significance. We acquired significance results in PMDS ZBNF. We acquired 22% increase compared to the chemical. And in ZBNF, we have 12.5% increase over the chemical non-ZBNF field, sir. Number of tillers, which is the actual attribute, yield attribute parameter, sir. Next, please. This is actually the effective tillers, sir, the panicle bearing tillers. This is also the actual yield attribute, the final yield attribute. Sir, this is also we have observed significant increase over the chemical field, both PMDS, ZBNF, and as well as ZBNF also, sir. The PMDS, ZBNF we have observed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Grain weight is
We have
higher.
28% increase over chemical, sir. 14% over chemical here, sir. Sole ZBNF. This is also highly significant, sir. Next. Sir, wet yield, our wet yield kg per acre, sir. Wet yield, actual grain yield, sir. The final, at the time of crop cutting experiment, we have observed 19% increase. The PMDS ZBNF 19% recorded 19% increase over the chemical field, sir. Yield, the final yield, and our ZBNF, sole ZBNF, we recorded 8% increase over the chemical field, sir. This is the final yield kgs per acre. Next.
Right.
Next, please.
Okay. So Walter, Walter, as you can see, paddy yield is 19% higher. This is out of 41 crop cutting experiments. And
yes,
I am getting the same report from all the districts.
Yeah.
I have not seen an instance and where paddy yields have declined. And this was the most difficult crop. And 34% of our area, sown area, is paddy.
Yeah. And look, this is so important, that the whole business of the root shoot ratio, you see these plants are investing much of their energy into their roots, into building the soil, root exudates, and that pays the dividends basically in terms of increased tillering, increased seed filling, so the heads are filled, but also then the chemical nutritional integrity of the actual plant that avoids frost resistance, wind resistance, disease resistance. And of course, it makes it much more nutritious and palatable as animal feed. So it's a root shoot ratio, how much the plant invests in building soil capital that pays these dividends, and the various performance measures you're getting are all reflecting and reinforcing that. So, no, it's excellent. And so the root shoot ratio you see in these healthy plants might be 10 to 1, whereas our industrial agricultural plants, we've been basically starving roots, and they may have a ratio of 1 to 10. So there could be up to 100-fold difference in the physiological fitness of these plants. And these are the evidences that you're seeing in these data.
Okay, thank you, Nukaraju. First, close the screen so that you have to make any comments you can make.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and what we will do, because it's about 1.5 hours, we'll have a break of 10 minutes, and then we'll resume after 10 minutes.
Okay, very good.
This is the bio break. Yeah, we are resuming after the break. Many people wanted to, know the exact location. So this is the state of Andhra Pradesh. As you can see, it has a very long coastline, 970 kilometers, and the southern part is, semi-arid, but this area is blessed with rains, but also has to contend with cyclones. So this is the map of Andhra Pradesh, and this is where the action is taking place. So now what I'll request Zakir to please present the resilience to floods. Zakir?
Thank you, sir.
And given the fact that we're running out of time, so
Yes,
please
sir.
do it quickly. And also after this, we'll have Vijayanagaram make a presentation, because we have
Yes, sure.
to have enough time to listen to Walter. Yeah, Zakir,
So,
please go ahead.
greetings to all. So, I'm going to present recently in Andhra Pradesh we had 10 to 15 days rainfall, heavy rainfall, and there is a lot of damage across the districts. So we did a small study to identify the significant difference between PMDS, ZBNF forms and the chemical forms. Especially, I took two crops here, paddy and cotton. I will present two cases. Next, please. So next, so if you can see the difference between PMDS followed by ZBNF and non-ZBNF root length and the lodging in the photographs, you can see it. There is huge difference between PMDS and ZBNF and compared to the non-ZBNF chemical forms, and the root length has already shown there is significance in that. Next, please. So we also got that 33% increase over chemical in these plots that in the root length. Next, please. Especially the same thing in from different districts where farmers have measured this root length and then the dodging, everything. You can see the difference clearly that how ZBNF PMDS crop is standing and there is lodging in non-PMDS. Non-ZBNF crops. Next, please. So, if only 5% of the land is affected by the recent rains in one of the districts, 2 acres of land, the recovery rate is 80 to 85% in ZBNF when compared to chemical fields. But only recovery rate is 30 to 40%. And because maybe more number of pillars, you have seen the results. And robust root growth as well. Next, please. So we have calculated the recovery rate status, that is 82% in PMDS, ZBNF, and 15% only in chemical. And we took the data on yes and no basis, and PMDS plus ZBNF, yes percent is very high when compared to chemical forms. Next. And the chi-score test also shows that it is very significant. The p-value is 0.03. Next, please. This is a case of East Godavari where the field is completely submerged, and after that rains have stopped. You can see the difference between PMDS followed ZBNF and the chemical plots. So recovery is good in ZBNF, PMDS plus ZBNF, and it is still the chemical plot is under submergence. Next, please. So the pest attack in some of the areas there is no pest attack. Big difference between the PMDS ZBNF plots compared to chemical plots, even though there is lodging. Next, please. So the lodging percentage is very low in PMDS followed by ZBNF, that is only 25%, and 75% in lodging percentage in chemical plots. Next. Next, please. This is the chi-square value. The p-value is 0.002. It's highly significant, the lodging percentage. Next. And incidentally, this year due to heavy rains, we have found in some of the districts the outbreak of bacterial leaf blight disease in chemical plots, but it is less in PMDS plus ZBNF plots. So you can see the difference. There are right-hand side chemical plot affected by bacterial leaf blight, and left-hand side there is no incidence of bacterial leaf blight in PMD followed by ZBNF plot in East Godavari of one of the rice bowl district in Andhra Pradesh with more chemicals, high input using chemicals. Yeah, next please. This is the lodging comparison with one of our colleagues, Sharath. He also practiced this PMDS followed by ZBNF in paddy, and you can see even in his field also he noticed the difference in lodging. Next please. So coming to the cotton, there is also a lot of difference between boll damage and stem breaking, everything. I will show some of the results. Next. You can see the photographs, the root length, there is 21.42% increase over chemical. The number of flowers also we have calculated, that is 37.5% increase. Number of bolls per plant is 50% increase, and percentage of flower draft is less in PMDS followed by ZBNF cotton. Next please. And you can see the difference between the more damage in conventional cotton compared to whereas less damage in to bolls in PMDS cotton due to this heavy rainfall. This is especially in Guntur district where it is the most cotton growing district in Andhra Pradesh. Next please. So even in cotton as well, there is significant difference between PMDS followed by ZBNF. That is lodging percent is only 5%. Conventional it is 95%. Next please. And you can see here the recovery percentage is high in the ZBNF, where the recovering crops, the cotton crop is recovering crops when compared to the chemical plots. Only 25% I can find this recovery percentage in chemical plots. Next please. Next please. So this is chi-square analysis, and chi-square analysis is also showing significant difference in the recovery percentage. Next please. And you can see the difference in this photograph that the damage, severe damage, stem breaking of stems. So these are all the differences. So this is actually, most of the farmers took photographs and we collected the data and we tried to put it in just a small, quite significant levels we tested. Next please. And this is also significant. The breakage of stem and plant parts due to heavy rains is significant. You can see the PMDS ZBNF, no is there, and yes, breakage of stem, yes, percentage is high. So the p-value is also 0.024 level. That is the significant at 0.05 level. Next please. So the damage to flowers and fruiting bodies as well. You can see flower drop, it is 10% in PMDS followed by ZBNF, and 11% damage to fruiting bodies. And whereas in chemical, it is this damage to fruiting bodies is 89% and flower drop is 90%. So significant, it is highly significant. Next please. Yeah, these are the results we got comparing this PMDS followed by the various main crops and then ZBNF. So due to lack of time, could not able to present all the crops. So I considered only paddy and cotton, which are the major crops in Andhra Pradesh. Thank you very much.
Walter, this resilience to floods has been one of the most important factors this season, because we've had some very unusual rainfall across all the districts this year. And we are able to see in some districts, even after 10 days of submergence, the paddy crop was intact after the water had receded. And in fact, I see the resilience as one very important factor getting people into practicing natural farming. So now, due to paucity of time, last presentation will be from Vijayanagaram. Very quick presentation, and if there is time, I'll ask Guntur and Kadapa, but subject to how quickly Vijayanagaram finishes. We have chosen Vijayanagaram district because this is one district which has done extremely well in terms of scaling up. It's a small district, but even then, compared to its size, very unexpected, around 18,000 farmers were able to, initiate PMDS pre-monsoon dry sowing this year. Yeah, quick, Prakash, are you ready? And then Parnet.
Ready, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead.
A very good evening to all the participants, and this is Prakash, District Project Manager, Vijayanagaram. Sir, the scaling up of PMDS has happened with the lecture of Walter sir in Guntur, where we got overall view of how to take the PMDS, what all the impacts, and we have made a lot of planning exercise at the DPMU level of how to take up the scaling program in the district with the field cadres, sir.
Next slide. Yeah.
This is how we have planned, sir, because Vijayanagaram district, we are working in 242 villages with 35,000 farmers, and we are able to take up with 18,000 farmers in different crops, and 90% of the farmers are paddy and 10% in orchards and other crops, sir. And with the trigger of taking of PMDS and the boost up of the yield, we have planned to take up in 35,000 farmers in the 2021 Kharif, sir. Next.
Excellent.
Next, please.
You explain this. He's already gone to the, with 18, you have used 18 varieties of crops for the PMDS.
Here we have chosen the variety. This is how we have made up the plan in the district, sir. We have indigenous seed production is there with the farmers of 6 to 7 varieties, and we could able to converse with the Department of Agriculture with the supply of 2 to 3 varieties of seed and another 6 to 7 varieties from the external sources. In the collection of the seed, the FPOs, the village organizations, the field cadres, and a lot of system was developed in the district for taking of this huge number of farmers to divert to this PMDS. This is the photograph of how many seeds are being taken up in the PMDS in the paddy crop. This is actually the Honorable Member of Parliament field who has taken up 12 acres of PMDS in the first year of conversion in the ZBNF. Next.
Next, please. Seed treatment is in progress.
So,
Nayak, Prakash.
Sir.
Please go ahead. 1 second. Walter, this is one very unique thing in Vijayanagaram and also in many of the districts is that they are preparing all this together. Collective preparation of inputs, collective preparation of various bioinoculums, and that is something which Vijayanagaram has specialized in, but all the districts are moving in this direction. That is something very inspiring, that each farmer is helping the other farmer, and a lot of learning happens through this collective actions.
So this is one slide where it shows the collective approach which we have adopted in Vijayanagaram, where we have used the local institutions of the government which has established recently the Rait Bharosa Kendras, and the village organizations have actively participated. The SSG momentum has taken place in collection of the seed and packing and distribution among the SSG members to take up these PMDS with diversified seed. And we have made a collective approach of collection, distribution, seed treatment, and sowing across the district in a campaign mode for 1 month from May to June, sir. Next. The next slide, which shows about the diversity of the plants in the field of after sowing. The women happily showing of 16 to 17 varieties of plants in the fields. Next. Next, we have calculated the biomass estimate also in the fields of PMDS fields, where we have conducted the CC experiments across the district, and we could estimate the biomass also. Nearly, we got 10 tons of biomass per acre by taking of these PMDS. Of 5 into 5, we got 63 to 70, depending upon the age of the PMDS crop. And we have noticed 50 cases in 40 days old and for 63 in 50 days old PMDS crop. Next, please.
Next.
And wherever we have taken the PMDS, we couldn't notice any incidence of pest. This is one advantage which we have seen, and we have seen a diversified ecosystem developed in the crop. We could able to see beneficial insects, spiders, and we could also see the bird nest in the paddy crop, first of its kind, where we have never noticed in the past 20 years. This is also a positive sign. And this is the impact of PMDS or Navadanya, where we could see the intact soil to the root zone, and we could see a lot of earthworms in the soil, and the tillering capacity is also increased drastically. Nearly we could see 20 to 25 in chemical, and we could see 30 to 37 in PMDS with ZBNF. And as West Godavari said, we have noticed and the productive tillers also increased in the PMDS plus ZBNF crop. Next, please.
Prakash, you're not audible. Yeah.
So
next.
So this is the slide which is showing about the intactness of the soil to the root zone and the earthworms.
Crop cutting Vellaninka. Last slide.
Next.
Yeah, this one. You explain this.
And we have planned for 140 CC experiments during this Kharif 2020. As of now, we have completed 42 CCs with 3 comparisons, PMDS with ZBNF and chemical. And we could see a positive sign of 2 cases more than that of the chemical and non-PMDS. So this is nearly 11.17% increase yield in the PMDS plots, and the cost of cultivation has also reduced to 3,000 rupees per acre in paddy. Next, please. And keeping all these advantages and the farmers' fairness towards taking of PMDS, we have planned to take up 35,000 number of farmers to the pathway of taking PMDS by 2021 Kharif, and with the diversified seed of 18 to 26 number variety of crops. And we are planning to take a special orientation in the month of March 2021, and a mass campaign will be run across the ZBNF cluster villages in the month of April 2021, and all the preparatory activity will be completed by the first fortnight of April, and the collective PMDS sowings will be taken up from the month of first fortnight of May to June or July as per the schedule, sir. This is what we want to present from Mizoram. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Prakash. Yeah. Can you quickly load Parnaidu's presentation, J2, tribal areas? This is a remarkable work where last year itself 100% farmers methods of working there done by the NGO.
So shall I take over, sir?
Please go ahead. Namaste to all the participants in the webinar. In first slide, I wish to how tribal area agriculture conditions are different from plain agriculture fields. In tribal area, there are small size plots and small and marginal farmers also high. Sandy and red soils, mostly rain-fed fields, using mostly natural and direct using of cow dung. Seeds are mostly local and traditional. Farm mechanization is also very less, using very less pesticides. Low yields compared to plain area, but due to practices of natural farming methods, including PMDS, productivity in tribal areas increasing year after year. In this slide, I am sharing the cluster-wise farmers and land extent under.
Yeah, Parnadu, please go ahead.
100% of 8,500. Yes, sir. 100% of 8,557 farmers in all the 8 clusters practicing PMDS in 11,092 acres during current year. Next, please. Here in this slide, I am very happy to sharing the year-wise average yields in kg per acre in each cluster. The average of 8 clusters in Kharif 18, there is no PMDs in this year, 1741 kgs. In Kharif 19, we are doing partial PMDs. They got 1941 kgs. In Kharif 20, we are doing 100% PMDs. In this year, we got 2,239 kgs. Percentage of increase in 2019 over non-PMDs year 2018 is 11%, 50. Percent increase in 2020 over non-PMDs year 28 kg, 28 plus. Next, please. Here we are seeing year-wise field comparison. Next. This is the last slide showing one example on 365 days season-wise crops and incomes. Farmer name Bidika. Arudra, village Lankajodu in Kurupa Mandal, got 1,51,640 rupees per year in 3 seasons. In pre-monsoon dry sowing, she got 21,530 rupees. In Kharif, she got 29,550 rupees. Rabi dry sowing, she got 24,740 rupees. Totally, she got in half acre 75,820. Net income for 1 acre 1,51,640 rupees. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, yeah. So, Walter, we managed to, sort of finish the case studies, testimonies, and now it's actually over to you. to take us through the next session. This is entirely now, you have heard everybody. So now please give us
Yes, look, thank you very much.
time.
And let's look at that, but also then let's have some questions or some discussion at the end so people can do that. But look, very, very impressed. The actual evidence from the field is compelling. And so I think this is the point that we had when we came last year too. It is using the evidence in the field, the lessons from those farmers and what we're seeing, and we must never dispute that. We must never doubt ourselves. That's the reality. Sure, science now has to look at what has caused this, what are the processes that have made this happen, but the reality is the reality. The evidence is compelling. So I think we can very confidently say from what we've seen previously, but also this last 12 months, that it's a compelling basis of evidence in the field that zero budget natural farming and these pre-monsoon dry sowing agroforestry, agroecology systems are working wonderfully well. And, myself, Max, Phil, Dee, all the people looking at it, all we can say is, yes, here is our understanding of the processes that make that happen. And certainly we can explain. It's very compelling because basically from a productivity point of view, you're making it very clear that by having improved the soil structure, by having maintained life in that soil for 365 days of the year, by enabling those root shoot ratios and those root proliferations to be sustained over that whole year, we're getting really significant dividends, whether it's in yield, whether it's in the actual nutritional integrity of the plants, whether it's the strength and health of the plants to resistance. And so it's quite clear that it's actually the better soil microbial root interface that we've created through these 365 days of life in the soil that we're getting these much more productive and resilient plants. Actually, this is going to be a very important thing in the future because as you showed in that flooding example, it's actually going to be hydrological extremes that are going to challenge agriculture and humanity over the next decades. With climate change, we're going to get more and more unreliability, extremes of climate, floods, droughts, what have you. And so the incompatibility of growing a crop with those extremes is going to be where there'll be enormous suffering unless we get it right. And I think this is the real power then of basically these agroecologies, because we can build higher resilience in these crops, more resistance to these extremes, more avoidance of these extremes, as you've so wonderfully demonstrated. That's actually going to be so important socially because people won't be leaving their farms, won't be going into cities, will be able to stay on the land because of that resilience factor. So whereas before we were looking at just yields, tons per hectare, I think now we can look at this resilience, the capacity to sustain cropping, even with extremes, and that socially is going to be very important. Okay, so basically the other area that we haven't been able to get into, but I think it's apparent right throughout all the observations we've made, this comes to the actual nutritional integrity and quality of the plants and the food that you're growing. We, at the moment, of course, we understand and we actually really concerned, the world is under this COVID virus epidemic, but these epidemics are going to keep on coming. And so it's actually the health of the resilience and health of our population that's going to be the key factor for keeping, again, future stability and future social equity. And so the role of nutritional integrity and preventative health through the quality of the food that we're growing is so important. And while we haven't got the data yet, I think if you compare the nutritional integrity of the food that we're growing through these processes compared to the industrial, agricultural, chemical processes, we will really see enormous benefits. And I think that's, again, an area for the future that's really important. But now I want to come on to actually the other big exciting thing that, in a sense, pre-monsoon dry seeding enabled us to now vision and explore. And that's the capacity. Can we, because of this capacity to grow crops reliably in dry areas, can we help to start regenerating some of the vast areas of degraded landscape that we have created over the last 8,000 years, largely through agriculture? There's 14 billion hectares of land on this planet, and so far humanity has created about 5 billion hectares of man-made desert and wasteland. That's some 40% of the land area we've actually turned into desert and wasteland. This was land that was all vegetated, the Sahara, Australia, it was all vegetated 8,000, 10,000 years ago, and it's been progressively degraded through our land management. And so pre-monsoon dry seeding and what you've demonstrated in India, Vijay, but also the whole farming is actually powerful because it's giving us, humanity globally, a powerful tool to say, can we regenerate some of these degraded landscapes? Instead of having the land dry and bare, waiting for a monsoon and then growing green for 4 months of the year, have we got the potential to have green landscapes, regenerative landscapes, healthy soils for 365 days of the year? And it's that potential that has enormous global significance. And so the challenge now becomes, okay, well, how do we scale up and how do we extend and how we demonstrate this potential? And again, it's full credit to you, what you're doing in India, because it's through your extension from your farmer training programs, you know, how we actually can build and extend these systems. So basically your farmer training, the numbers of farmers, the self-help groups, that's a powerful model to say, okay, here we are, we can extend it throughout a community. When you're saying you're now looking at 1 million farmers doing this, that's outstanding globally, because for the last 20 years, all around the world, we've had very innovative individual farmers doing this, but it's really India that is leading to say, look, here is a means to extend it right across our farming community, revitalize regional economics because of those. So that's full credit. But we can go further, because the next challenge is, can we actually scale this up, not just as individual farmers, but actually at a bigger regional strategic level? You know, can we take larger mini catchments, 2,000 hectares, not just 1 hectare of land, and can we work collectively to then say, can we take region by region, catchment by catchment, and design regeneration strategies using PMDS and your agroecologies to do that? And as we said and saw in one of the demonstrators there, can we now create not just individual farmers doing it, but can we create new local eco businesses, making the biofertilizers, providing the seed, managing herbivores, and also creating higher value capture opportunities from the higher quality food that we're growing, rather than just relying on selling our food to commodity brokers where we get very little for it. So can we move up that value chain, preserve food, and make food, sell food directly into markets at a higher quality, higher value in a preserved form? So this is really powerful, because this is this whole eco-revitalization, and particularly in a post-COVID world, can we relocalize, can we build resilience, but also can we reinvigorate regional economies at these bigger scales? And I can see basically developing blueprints, demonstrating at a catchment level how, yes, 2,000 hectares or whole village region can be revitalized, and then that blueprint can be multiplied over and over and over again. And of course, that then extends to the next step, because this is applicable globally. All our friends who are connected and listening in from Africa, Latin America, Australia, what have you, because these are areas where we can say, look, these blueprints are valid everywhere. We can tailor make them, but then how do we take these regional, rural revitalization strategies based on the soil, based on these processes, and how do we actually use them to revitalize the natural capital of the soil, the economic viability of those regions, but then, of course, the social value, the social health of those communities. And I think that really sort of comes back into what Anne-Sophie raised, what the UN is all about, these sustainability development goals, because this is then the grassroots self-empowerment of, yes, we're going to achieve equity, we're going to achieve food security, water security, all those social values through that regional revitalization. There's another very big challenge that, in a sense, is facing us globally, and we were talking about that in the context of Europe just the other day, and that's actually the strategic power of these innovations. Because at the moment, we've got some 60 million people that are already effectively climate refugees or moving out of areas. And we saw in Europe when agriculture in Syria broke down because of a sustained drought, social unrest in Syria then meant millions of people had to leave, how very much that stresses social stabilities everywhere. And if we can build resilient biosystems, agricultural systems, we can actually do enormous benefit to avoid these social disruptions. And so that strategically, in terms of the whole global community, is actually very, very important. So the opportunity becomes, do we take a region such as the Mediterranean, for example, which we know is aridifying, it's getting drier, not just the Mediterranean, it's happening in Australia, it's happening in Southwest the US, California, regions getting drier. So how do we actually say, look, can we collectively use these processes to revitalize more resilient agro ecosystems in those regions to avoid these social crises, hunger and social instability, social movements, and the economic and social crises that come from that. And I think, again, at the UN level, this is something that's very important. How do we actually use these practical tools to do that? So I think these methods that India is demonstrating have enormous potential and significance globally, but we must do that in these next couple of decades because climate extremes are intensifying and we're really at the front of actually societies being impacted by them. And yet you're demonstrating that, yes, we can improve those yields, we can build more resilient crops, and that's enormously beneficial. One other thing that's pretty close to what I'm interested in from pre-monsoon dry seeding is also significant because this is this question of how does it help us to cool the planet? Can we safely and naturally help to cool the planet? And what role can pre-monsoon dry seeding play in that? And you see, it's a very simple matter of physics that basically if we have soils that are covered with vegetation and protected, they remain much, much cooler than bare exposed soils. And in Australia, we've got the data. Protected soils with plants are rarely getting above 25 degrees centigrade soil temperatures, whereas bare exposed arid soils often get up to 70 degrees temperature. And this has a profound effect in the amount of re-radiation of heat that's coming from those soils. We won't go into the physics now, but there's enormous effect in the amount of re-radiation depending on the temperature of the soil. It's simple Stefan Boltzmann black body radiator physics. And what people have forgotten about, that in fact it is the amount of re-radiation from the earth that drives the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is basically governed by this re-radiation, and then what percentage of that re-radiation is absorbed by gases in the air. And we've just been concerned with basically CO2, but it's only 11% of the gas effect and 4% of the actual total greenhouse effect. But the real variable that we can control in the greenhouse effect is the amount of re-radiation going up. So we can turn down the greenhouse effect significantly by having green cover over land surfaces. So if we could get a significant land area protected with green cover crops because of pre-monsoon dry seeding, we can significantly cool the planet. And we have to cool the planet by about 1% of the incident solar radiation. And there's no question the mathematics says, yes, regenerating these degraded arid landscapes back to pre-monsoon dry seeding could contribute significantly to safely and naturally cooling the planet. So, I mean, that's a frontier that's bigger than India in a way, but it's a frontier that all of humanity in this next decade has to address. But what you've done in India is actually demonstrate here is a tool, here is a process, here is a practical means to do that. I just now want to raise another one that's actually very dear to my heart, or Australia's particularly, and that's the question that we've asked ourselves: can we restore the Australian monsoon? Because 6,000 years ago, we had a monsoon. We lost that monsoon when basically we killed a lot of the megafauna, the herbivores that basically used to be in Australia died. And then we had a very, very increased intensity of wildfires. And of course, we've got all the data in the geological record, pollen analysis. Here's the increase in wildfires of charcoal, and we totally changed our vegetation from an open savanna, as it had been in most of the arid areas of the world, and we created then much more desertified conditions. And because we created these desertified regions, the Great Sandy Desert in West Australia, what have you, we actually created very hot, high pressure zones over the landmass. And of course, that prevented the monsoon, the cool, low pressure monsoonal air flowing into those areas. And so we lost the monsoon. Now, the monsoon is very, very dear to India, I'm sure, but not just India. There's 3 billion people depend on that monsoon. And so the value and the significance of this revegetation, pre-monsoon dry seeding, and recreating and stabilizing the monsoons is another whole major area that we basically, science tells us it's real. The evidence from history tells us it's real. We obviously don't have records of increased rainfall in small farmer plots because that's, more profound. But overall, in the long run, yes, we've got to cool the planet. We've got to naturally, safely cool these catchments, these regions. We've got to restore and protect that rainfall because that's critical. And so the value of pre-monsoon dry seeding as a tool for humanity to help regenerate, to cool the planet, to restore these monsoons is an exciting but very, very important frontier that we need to explore further. And so the UN and agencies around the world, these are the exciting but critically important areas where India has, in a sense, led the way and shown what has to happen. So just wrapping up this discussion, we're here, in a sense, especially in Australia, we always say, look, we're just innocent bystanders from down under. We're just observing nature. And it's actually nature that is giving us all the answers. This is all the lessons are from nature. And we ask ourselves, well, how did nature create these green biosystems across the planet despite the climate? We ask the question, well, how much is the actual vegetation regulating the climate, regulating the rainfall, regulating the temperature? And if we ask those questions, we can then say, well, look, if we understand the processes, can we regenerate? And just as nature did in creating the biosystems, can we regenerate them? And what you've shown is that, yes, we can. Okay, and what we are learning through these processes that, yeah, these are the tools, the point of agency for regeneration. And when we look at nature, it all comes back to soil, making healthy soil, regenerating the Earth's soil carbon sponge, because that gives us the means to hold the water, to make the nutrients available, to give us the productivity, and actually to regenerate these healthy biosystems, and for Anne-Sophie to revisit and achieve those 17 Sustainable Development Goals that Antonio Guterres, the UN, is so clearly articulated we must achieve this decade for the well-being of humanity. So I think it's just exciting and profound. We've got the tools. There's always more to know, but we'll only know that by doing it as you're doing it in India. And then as we explore and we document, as we did with pre-monsoon dry seeding, here are the processes that explain what's going on, why it's going on, then we can actually just move this agenda forward and actually regenerate Earth. So look, I'd like to sort of finish the discussion now, but then really open it all up to questions, because I'm sure there's details of processes and different applications, but there may be challenges as well. So let's have the discussion and yes, see where we can take this. Thank you.
Walter, it's like this. We have two choices. Dharmender had a number of technical questions, but then
Yep.
I see that there are a lot of panelists themselves who would like to ask some questions. So, we may need your time later on to answer Dharmender's
Always.
technical question.
Always.
But I thought we'll take advantage of so many, people on the panel. Maybe they have some questions. So I would like to, ask our panelists. I think Srijit Mishra is an economist, big champion of our work. So Srijit, you had any question?
Yeah, yes, it has been really nice listening to Professor Walter, and I did listen to some of his talk because you also, this streaming was done even before pandemic started, and you did stream his Anantapur and other talks, so that was really nice. And I have been visiting some of your farms and fields, but I think one thing which Professor Walter was mentioning, yeah, these are very important lessons for us, and your data that you are showing about resilience on various things and the COVID pandemic dimension that Professor Walter mentioned, maybe what can be done is the clusters where the pre-monsoon sowing, dry sowing has happened, and of course there we have seen that scientifically the root shoot ratio has been good, but how resilient has been the population there to in response to COVID-19, let us say now incidences or cases in similar comparable geographical areas one can take up, and one can also see that. So having said that, I think is that a meaningful question to ask? I can. That's what one thing. The other thing that I would like to pose is, I think it's a lot of interesting information, and these are lessons for the global scenario, definitely. But we need a lot of academic input in terms of human resources, in terms of funds also to do this, because we have to break silos in many ways. With soil sciences, I'm an economist, we need anthropologists. So we need various kinds of scientists and social scientists to come together. And I have told Vijay Kumar Garu that I'm willing to take up this and help you in any way. But I think we should think in that direction. And like your natural farming fellows, I think we need more fellows there who do farming as well as documenting for us. And we need quick, like this COVID gave us a remarkable coming through of scientists, and thousands of publications have come out in the last 1 year. I think we need a similar movement here, a large number of publications coming out, so that it will be easier for us to push our cases through the governments, through various policy actors. So otherwise, whenever we go, they just ask us, okay, fine, it has happened there, will it happen here? So we need to bring in more evidence, because people, those who are here, I think in a large sense, they have observed, have seen farmers, and they are somewhat converts. But I think we should take the story beyond that. Sorry for this side comment, but I think these are important things that is necessary.
Look, absolutely. Okay. And this is wonderful because you see, like us, you're seeing the evidence, but now the question is we've got to explain it and really sort of make the business case. And this is actually a very critical thing. Up to now, we've been putting the evidence physically, scientifically. Yeah, here is how plants grow, here's how soils work. But now we've got to actually sort of say, look, here is the actual compelling business case why this is so superior from a point of view resilience, but also we've got to bring in new metrics here. We've got to say, look, here is the natural capital, resource improvement value. Here is the social capital equity and social capital resilience sort of values from these systems. So we've got to define new performance measures. We've also got to look at the current system. We obviously have enormous amount of protection and subsidies and externalities that are built in and actually protect the status quo. And so I think these new innovative systems are actually giving us the opportunity to say, well, look, if we do the accounting on these new metrics, what is the actual compelling business case and how can they actually be used then to accelerate these innovations across the world? But so, yes, very much inviting that wider debate from all the different disciplines to say here is in a sense, a revolution, a new innovation beyond the green revolution, a new paradigm. And so let's look at it and see how far we can take it.
Eliane, would you like to ask Walter? Eliane?
Yes, Walter, so this is very exciting for me, and you're talking about capitals and how this relates to capitals. So I in September, I actually joined the supervisory board of the Capitals Coalition. So there's a huge alignment with what I do and my interests. And also many of you are probably aware of FAO's report last week around the state of agriculture and food and the urgency of water. And so Walter, how do you help us scale this so all 570 million smallholder farmers around the world adopt this technology? Because we really need this, and not only do we need to educate smallholder farmers, but we need to educate all financial institutions investing in agriculture. And this really, around the capitals accounting, this is how we need to show this data. And so I just want to be your champion in Africa and anywhere in the world. And so just tell me, what can I do to help?
Well, look, yeah, no, I'm asking you the same thing. Can I help you? But look, as Anne-Sophie is sort of more or less leading with, see, here are the farmer field schools. Here's the extension of these processes to farmers. We talked about, can we build this at a catchment, at a clustered critical mass level? Can we innovate, incubate these eco businesses, create new jobs and new enterprise at a regional level. And we're talking about this at the moment physically. Yeah, what is it physically? But I think, yes, engaging now with the economists to say, look, here is the actual far, far superior returns on investment on these new metrics. And then very quickly, this makes a compelling business case. This is the only solution we have for revitalizing economies, regenerating, a well-being in society. We've got enormous amount of money being printed around the world, quantitative easing, they're printing it and printing it. But at the end of the day, the only thing of value is, of course, social capital, humanity. But the next thing is soils, right? It is the health of our soils and the capacity of that soil to sustain food, water, biosystems, habitat, social equity, social stability. We had from the Arab Spring, there are 7 missed meals between social stability and chaos. That chaos will wipe out all of the money on the globe. I mean, if that happens, and so do you understand? We risk actually losing that whole value system unless we respect these natural values. And so it's us working together. Here's the science, but also here's now the economic value proposition, and then converting some of that immense amount of money that we're printing into actually these regenerative activities. See, we mentioned,
Walter,
for example, yep, go on, please.
And Walter, this is an opportunity to transform economics from an economics of limitation to the economics of abundance. From
Absolutely.
true cost accounting, we can innovate and go to, this is true opportunity accounting.
Absolutely. And look, Vijay sort of puts the example that, I mean, India spends $10 billion a year on subsidizing fertilizer, on subsidizing electricity, which is then used to pump the aquifers dry and desiccate the country. And a fraction of that money invested intelligently in basically these regenerative agricultures, the agroecologies, could have enormous benefits. And all over the world, it's, let's change the accounting, let's change the real metrics, social value, natural capital values, and it becomes a compelling self-driving agenda.
Thank you. Emma from FAO.
Yes, thank you, Vijay, thank you, Walter, and all the other speakers for this amazing presentation, because I think the discussion was really deep. It was really interesting. I would like to ask something that no one has mentioned yet, but I would like to know from the point of view of farmers, and especially from women's farmers, how these methodologies change the workload in the farm, and if there is any evidence on the implications to the empowerment of women. If you have, because I know that all this this approach is based on self-help women's group, etc. But we never mentioned this. Oh. What is the consequences for the gender relationship in the field? Please.
Emma, we are studying this. It's very interesting because we are seeing from the women huge benefits in terms of health. And everywhere I go, I mean, I must have visited hundreds of villages. The men talk about money they got, the women talk about health, their children's health. It has had a huge positive impact on health. So we have a separate team working on health and nutrition. right from the preschool and pregnant women, nursing mothers. So we have one dedicated intervention here, which is to create villages with zero hunger and especially taking care of the most critical segment, that is adolescent girls, pregnant women, nursing mothers, and mothers of infants. So we have a special intervention there. But what we are seeing is they are not using chemical pesticides, fertilizers. So they tell us that their skin rashes have come down, their lung problems have disappeared. That is one part. The second part is the women self-help groups are actually financing the men in the agriculture operations. So they tell me very happily that now earlier the men used to take money from them and then go and buy fertilizers or whatever. So they were not clear what is happening to their money because they also share in the household finances. Now they're telling me very proudly, now we know where exactly every rupee of my money goes. So it's the money of both husband and wife, but thanks to the women's self-help group, the women's role in financing agriculture operations is very significant in Andhra Pradesh. And the women are saying, now we know where the money is going. And, very little money is going out now. And we also have a strategy of universalizing homestead gardens. So they are getting 15 to 20 different kinds of vegetables, fruits in their backyards. So we started that intervention. Now we decided that we should universalize that. So our entire strategy is centered around what it would take for women not only to accept this, but also to lead the program management, to hold our staff accountable. So everything is centered around making them the leaders in the program. And it is because of them we are able to scale up. Not interested, involved in this actively, this program would never scale up. So yes, we have that in mind. Can I invite John? John Wilson, AFSA. John, are you there?
John Feldman, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. John Wilson, and then we'll have John Feldman also. But John Wilson. John, would you like to say something?
Yeah, sure. No, and we're working closely with Vijay and the community managed natural farming, and we're kind of planning at the moment a sort of 5-year collaboration where CMNF can work with us across Africa with the African Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. And I mean, what I'm hoping is that this COVID ends fairly soon. One of the strategies I think it's going to be quite important is to have farmers and government officials to actually come and visit and see the work in Andhra Pradesh. I know that's quite a big undertaking, but I can imagine that will really win people over and really get people to have an excellent understanding. And what we want to do is to find strategic places within the continent where we can take people and when they come back, there are opportunities to really start taking this to scale. Because I think although the context is different here, so many of your principles apply. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Vijay.
Thanks, John. I see that Sandeep wants to make a point. Sandeep?
I'll just open.
And after that, I would like Frank to give his comments.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Sandeep. I'll just open my video so then you can see me. Yeah, I work with the organization called Development Alternatives, and we work in the Bundelkhand area. And this year only the zero budget natural farming we started. So I posted some comments in the chat. So when we talk about the scaling up, I talk from the late adopters point of view. the problems of late adopters in the farming systems. So they see everybody's success, then they adopt. So by the time there are new models already introduced in the sector. So the early adopter are at the next level, the late adopter are still behind. So how we can develop a model where the late adopter become the second level adopter? So that's the challenge, because we are introducing a nature-based farming system, but the market is pushing the commercial farming, and where you get lots of advertisements which pamper you to adopt these things. So that's the problem we are facing. Like this year, when we demonstrate the millet in Bundelkhand, the rainfall is only 300 mm. All the rest of the crops got failed. Only the millets were successful. And when we had interaction, the farmer said, we must go back to the traditional farming system, the crops which are for that agroclimatic zone, basically. So, but generally it's not happen when you go into the regular practice. So how we convert the models which motivates the late adopters to become the early adopters. So that's the challenge. So what is your views, Walter, on that? I just want to understand on that.
Look, very briefly, yes, it's right. There's different stages of adoption. I think initially it's people who adopt it from a point of view of, yes, they're just passionate about the innovation. But if we can document the economic benefits, then there's a lot of people who are sort of watching, informed and watching, but they will have the compelling business case to invest. And that will then drive them in. And certainly in Australia, that's the message. But while we've got protection and subsidies and externalities of the status quo, you know, we're up against that. That's why we need this new accounting and metrics. But by far the most significant thing, and this comes back to the earlier point about women, is actually people realizing that their preventative health is 90% dependent on the nutritional integrity of the food they're eating. And if they can get higher nutritional food from these ecological, agroecology farming systems, this is really preventative health. And in a sense, as viruses and diseases and, you know, social problems intensify, that driver of women to care for the health of themselves, their families, their children becomes really paramount. So the voting, the economic voting of purchasing power for healthy food, nutritious food, becomes a massive demand driver. At the moment, we've basically got about a $10 trillion industrial food system globally, and it drives a disease industry, a medical industry, a pharmaceutical response industry of tens of trillions of dollars. You see, and so farmers are getting globally about $1.5 trillion of that economic pie. And we're basically paying tens of trillions of dollars in medical consequences. And of course, once you realize that health comes from nutritious food, that we can avoid a lot of these negative health consequences, then you end up with a tipping point that is so massive, the challenge will, can we supply enough of that food fast enough? But that's going to be the big tipping point. But in the interim, it is the innovators, it is the business cases to say, look, this is profitable, this is building soil capital, this is building natural capital, this is building social capital. But the big change will then come as people vote with their dollars for and rupees for healthy outcomes, because that's their life, that's existential.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for a
Frank?
very elaborative answer.
Frank?
Thank you very much, Vijay. This was a fantastic and outstanding meeting, and I've learned a lot. I work with indigenous communities around the world. There are 470 million indigenous peoples, and their agriculture is exactly what Didi was saying, that they are consider all species to be essential workers. They work in which, but yet their work is considered by most governments as unproductive, backward, and to be written off. And I'm part of the UN Food Summit, Food System Summit in one of the leadership groups. And in a meeting that I had raised about the issues of how do we bring indigenous people food systems and their regenerative value system, they said, you have to create enough evidence for us to believe in what you say. And I said that if an Inuit person has lived for all these years under such trying conditions and survived and is today, what more evidence do you require? So the point I'm trying to raise is that these meetings are very useful, but help us who are working with indigenous people to create that evidence that there is a science behind what we are doing. And that is what Walter was saying. And I appreciate very much through Vijay, if we can collaborate in building that sort of bridge. 470 million is more than the population of Americans, more than the population of Europeans. And that's not a small amount of people to be ignored. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I just reinforce that, absolutely correct. And this is where the nutritional integrity of the food, the health consequences, and the longevity of keeping those soils and productive systems, because we in our industrial system are just actually extractively mining our soils. You know, civilizations collapse within 100, 300 years because of that degradation of soils. And it's the actual indigenous communities that have learnt wisdom to sustain that. But these new metrics, if we look at the actual proper performance measures, then we won't be just going on weight of food, we'll be going on the quality, the nutrition, but also the long-term social and ecological benefits. And that will give you the evidence you can make. But look, Max from New Zealand actually might be able to make some comments there, because that's very much the debate they're having with their Maori traditional agriculture, and the values from that is being inculcated into now the New Zealand government's agricultural strategy. Max? Look, I'm not sure if he's still there, so we might just leave that.
No, he's there.
Oh, Max, yeah, good.
I'm here. Yes, no, that's New Zealand. We have the fortunate situation of being well watered with the rivers of water. The land, the Maori land name for New Zealand is Aotearoa, which literally translated into the land of the long white cloud. And so the people arriving in this country by boat would just see a long white cloud first. So we have a lot of water. We're relatively new in terms of the damage to our soils. I'm not saying that we are looking after it well. I would argue that our progression towards something not so good is as fast as everyone's. But the Māori hold a very strong position in our society, and we have treaties, the Treaty of Waitangi, which is now we are trying to rebuild. So the sad history of colonisation everywhere is being addressed here in somewhat, but through that comes this absolute belief by many people that the long-term understanding of the folk who have been here a longer time has huge validity, and that is the core of that report that I waved around earlier. It was done by North Tech from the people of the North on precisely this subject. So, Roy, I absolutely agree with your perspective. It is the way out of here. It is the direction that we must take. And of course, Walter's sitting there with I know a huge, deep respect for the 50,000, 80,000 years of the Aboriginal folk in Australia. that we now understand when we look at the histories of how they were operating. Yeah, we're far superior also. So yes, we're very hopeful that that this current climate, international climate that I'm lucky to be part of here. Thank you very much, by the way, Vijay. This is a celebration of life, what you are doing, and the size and scale of what you're doing in India is so humbling. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Yeah. Can I now ask John Feldman to give his comments, and then Leanne after him. John?
Yes, I actually have a question. It's about how to scale this up and move this into other countries. And so as I understand it, the pre-monsoon sowing is based on the seed coating and the pelletization of the seeds. And how it, and I, obviously I was there and I filmed all that. And it's a very community-based program based on using the cow dung and the cow urine and so forth. So in order to move that idea into other countries, those practices as well have to be moved on. Or are there other ways to coat the seeds which will allow them to be planted in a dry climate? That's a question.
Walter?
Right. Yes. Look, John. Yes.
Your territory.
Very short because this is complicated, but no. What really Vijay, demonstrated was quite unique. But it's totally natural and totally proven. See, what it is if we have organic matter, we have the right organisms and the seed, then basically the organisms in breaking down the organic matter, the mulch, can actually generate water. You see, I mean, if we go back to photosynthesis, it takes 6 grams of CO2, 6 grams of water to make 1 gram of sugar. And that's the photosynthetic process. But when microbes break down that gram of sugar or cellulose or lignin, they regenerate 6 grams of CO2, but also 6 grams of water. And this is metabolic water that is generated from oxygen, joining with the hydrogen and making water, new water. And so that new water that is generated is enough to germinate the seed. And so then there's a sequence of processes. So we are actually creating, in a sense, in that seed, inoculated seed with the organic matter, almost a spaceship, a mini oasis that can colonize drier areas. And in a sense, as long as we bring those 3 elements and those processes together, we can put this pre-monsoon dry seeding into any arid area in the world. Now we have to then refine, how much organic matter, what are the right organisms, but it opens the door to actually doing what nature did, regreening the deserts everywhere. And so it's quite profound. It's not a simple prescription, buy this from a shop. It's actually managing that sequence of processes of generating metabolic water. There's another stage then where basically the seedling creates mycorrhizal symbioses, and those mycorrhizae are able to then absorb water from soil surfaces way below the wilting point that plants by themselves can get at. And then there's a third stage where those healthier plants, and we saw them as far as the flood resistance and disease resistance, those healthier plants are actually then hygroscopically absorbing water from the air, harvesting water from those humid airflows. And in a sense, these 3 sources of water is what's enabling those plants to establish before the monsoon rains. And these processes, if we manage those, refine the applications, we can use those anywhere on this planet to help regenerate plants to regreen deserts.
So you're saying that the principles that are used to apply the seed coating can be transferred to any culture, to any farming
Oh,
practice.
and in traditional cultures they were, and yes, all we're doing is looking at nature, looking at these traditional cultures and saying, yes, that those processes are available. This is a whole new paradigm of rehydration of arid areas. It's profound.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Lee, can you please come in?
Great. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Lee Winowicki, a soil scientist based here in Nairobi, Kenya, working for World Agroforestry. And I just wanted to go back to some of the comments about generating the evidence base. And I think we need to challenge ourselves about what are the indicators that we're going to use to track these interventions, because we are talking about such complex systems that the typical indicators of yield do not capture the full benefit. So I was really delighted to see the indicators of resilience, root to shoot, the breakage and disease prevalence. And I am excited to hear comments about socioeconomic indicators. And of course, as a soil scientist, we'll be integrating soil carbon, soil microbial activity. And I think it's just really important that we start to weave these diverse interdisciplinary indicators together as we provide the evidence base around such unique and complex systems. And congratulations, and thank you so much for this webinar.
And thank you so much, and fully agree. And the other point, though, about evidence is that, no, the evidence of the farmer and the evidence in the field, that is the evidence. We're here as scientists to say, look, can we explain that and can we document that? But I totally agree with you. We need to document that on these new metrics, on really the relevant statistics, rather than just this, like yield, money, very simplistic, extractive metric. And yes, as we define new metrics, we define new values, and then those values change the world.
Thank you, Lee. And Lee is as much involved in our work as Anne-Sophie. So she's, virtually part of RYSS. I mean, she gives us remarkable, strength to take this research agenda forward. Thank you, Lee. So Walter, we are running out of time. So can I now request some concluding remarks, first from Didi, then Anne-Sophie, Phil, and Max. Yes, Didi?
Let me get my video on. There we go. Yes, this was very exciting and wonderful. I wanted to just show one very quick slide that I think for those who are interested in the water piece, this is just showing how when we implement all of these principles, that all of the rainwater will soak in, as you see on the left, and nothing will run off. That's how flood prevention happens. If you look at the place that's chemical farming or conventional farming, 4 inches of rain was put on these pans of soil. None of it got down to the plant roots. It all ran off, and it took a lot of the soil with it. So sorry, I just want to stop sharing. How do we do that? Okay, there we go. So I think that what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking about is both how do we bring water forward in the conversation globally in the way that carbon has come forward, that people have gotten very excited about soil carbon, but I think that water is something people can relate to more, and is in fact, we've learned a more powerful influence on both local climate and also global climate. A second piece that I would like to see more of in next year's anniversary is a celebration of the women's leadership in this, to have some speakers from those groups to highlight that aspect of this project, as I think that that's a key piece here. A lot of the farmland in the United States is owned by women who don't manage the land because they don't feel confident. And then this piece about indigenous science and leadership is very key. And finally, that we are talking about human health and the health of all species, and that human health is ultimately dependent on the health of every species. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Didi.
so much.
And so,
thank you, Vijay. You can see that
And
the
Didi,
younger generation has invited themselves into our debate. That's my 5-year-old.
oh, wow.
That's my little Janu. Yeah, and they should invite themselves in these talks, and we should keep them in mind. I think they have what we have to build this world for. So very, very excited to hear the update from everybody in the field. And we're following very closely the results with the team with Vijay. So a couple of points. I'm gonna just share 3 points. Lots of people have talked about the macroeconomics aspects of this and working with policymakers and how do we scale, etc. So this is something that I mentioned briefly that we are working on, doing this foresight study, advising the government. Walter also addressed the government of Andhra Pradesh when he was with us last year, and also address the Niti Aayog, the policy body that is advising the Prime Minister on these issues. And we have with us Bruno Dorin on the call, who's leading from CIRAD this foresight study to try to assess the bigger picture and how this kind of agriculture can actually bring solution for the economy, given that not enough jobs are created in other sectors, and we don't want everyone to migrate in mega slums, right? So we need to have thriving rural areas, and this is part. This kind of work in natural farming is part of the solution. The second point that's related that I want to pick up on is regenerating local economies. That is critical. It's not just about the production side. It's also about the nutrition, but also the business side. And new businesses are being created in the natural farming program of farmers selling locally made inputs, these bioinoculants based on cow dung, cow urine, or botanical insecticides that they are making themselves for other farmers, but also local markets, even barter between farmers of natural farming. And we just came out with this book, and I want to share with you, Enabling Sustainable Food Systems. We just released it in a conference, a global food system conference this morning. It's been built with INRAE and a network of innovators about how do we build local food systems that are sustainable. Myriads of initiatives around the world. This was written by these innovators to show what are practical tools and tips for building local markets for sustainable products. I can share the link in the chat. It's full of ideas about how do you finance local initiative for sustainable local markets, how do you build local markets, how do you engage consumers, how do you rope in policymakers, how do you create jobs around sustainable local market initiatives. And finally, I want to appraise you on a little bit on the next steps on where we're going with this work with Walter. So what because some people ask, how do we scale this and how do we continue building this? So one of the things we will do is, we're hoping to do is invest in the scientific experiments that we need to test in local conditions, the theoretical processes behind the work under pre-monsoon bright sowing and natural farming. So we're hoping that Walter can support us in building these experiments. The second thing is building master classes through online trainings on a regular basis for a few days with Walter and NDD on training the field staff and training the program staff of natural farming on understanding the science underpinning natural farming. And finally, working on this, supporting the shift to the landscape scale that Walter was talking about. Finally, we also want to continue sharing this these findings at international level. So we hope to organize some webinars with Walter and Vijay, with policymakers from other countries, so that such initiatives at scale can be known to more people and really act as an inspiration as well, that this is doable, it's being done, and this is the kind of change we want to see for our future generation. So great thanks to all of you in Andhra Pradesh, inspiring others, and to all of the people supporting you from around the world. Thanks to our men and women farmers who are taking the leap, although they live in very strenuous conditions. For many of them, many are ultra poor who are joining the program, and they are the ones taking the real risk and putting their heart out there, and they're really walking the talk. There are so many admirable farmers that I have met and we've worked with. Really hats off for them. So thanks to all, and have a great rest of the day, wherever you are.
Sophie. Walter, I just want one colleague from Mexico to say a few words, because Francisca, can you come in? Virender, unmute chestara varni.
Yes, sir. She has to unmute, sir. Muted.
Okay. Francisca, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead, Francisca.
Can you hear me, Vijay? I can't put my camera on, but I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to this magnificent webinar. The big question for me is how to translate the experience in Andhra Pradesh to Mexico. What are the conditions that have to follow in the case of Mexico? And I would like to further talks on that with Walter Jehne, with you, and see how to start piloting something like that here. I'm not going to waste time now on it, but I hope we can do that in the near future. I thank you so much. It's very inspiring, and I congratulate you. Thank you.
Walter?
Well, look, yes, thank you very much, Vijay. And look, what I really want to do is just thank you, but also particularly
No,
the
one second.
farmers.
This is, Walter, a quick response to Francisca, and then I'll come back to you for the...
No, well, yes, no, Francesca, I apologize.
Mexico.
No, of course. And look, this is for everybody, but particularly, yes, we very much welcome ongoing dialogue and really just sort of saying, look, how do we tailor make and apply and transfer it? It is applicable, but really we want to listen to learn your requirements so we can tailor make it optimally into that situation. But no, look, very keen. And I was just actually going to say thank you, but also we're here as servants, right? We're here to serve, because science is there in the service of farmers, because it's the farmers that are actually the grassroots. And of course, it's the farmers in Mexico, in India, around the world, the Maoris, everywhere. And it's really listening and respectfully understanding what their needs are, and then saying, how do we, as scientists, apply knowledge to help solve problems, but also to help empower their directions, their futures. And so that's really what I wanted to just say, really. Thank you to everybody, but farmers in particular. And yes, this is an ongoing journey. There's a lot more to learn, but we'll only learn it by doing it. You see, and as Anne-Sophie said, it's actually now, and you too, Francesca, it's putting those things into practice, and that's where we learn. But we have enough knowledge, that we can be confident that the future is in our hands, that it's we, the grassroots, community, farmers, this is where the future is going to depend on. And it's all basically in our hands, and we're standing on it, our soil, regenerating the earth's soil carbon sponge, and all the nutrition and the water and the biodiversity and the resilience that flows naturally from it. So thank you, nature, and thank you, everybody. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful discussion.
Just before you go, Vijay, the
Yes,
experiments
I was
that
calling
we've,
you next.
Sorry?
I said I was calling you next.
Okay. Just before I go, the experiments we've done over here in Australia that we've run through the microscopes and that quantify exactly how much we can work with. And it's really exciting to see that the people in Andhra Pradesh that are really got up and got this going. And what's so noticeable with regenerative agriculture, it's the well-being of the people that are doing it. It is, you know, money just can't buy what we're talking about. It's the well-being of the family, the whole community, and the experiments we're putting through the paces over here will simulate the same thing. So, BJ, on behalf of Regenerate Earth, wonderful story, great journey, and Sophie, thanks so much. To everybody else, on behalf of Regenerate Earth, I really thank everybody, and what great people, and go Mother Nature.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil, and Walter and Didi. Wonderful having you on board. Invaluable.
Thanks so much, Didi.
Thank you.
Max, would you like to say something? Max? Max, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Oh, very, very quickly. It is as reaffirmed tonight. It's all just about the interconnectedness of all life. And I'd like to stress that the fact that that generator that we've been talking about of the Indian Ocean is affecting us with the rivers of water. I'm with Didi. I want the focus to shift from the simplistic just CO2 and just how that fits. And so I'm hoping that that will be one of the things that will be followed and generated from what you're doing. The other thing is that there's constant request from farmers, and I'm one, for metrics to see whether or not we've made, and any metrics that we can come up with that show progress in the short term, really quick progress, really is useful. And to that extent, I'd like to draw your attention to those who don't know about it. There's a body of work called the Visual Soil Assessment, which can turn an individual anywhere really into a soil expert in a couple of hours with a spade in their hand and know what they're looking at by smelling and playing with their soil. We've found that really useful to test whether or not we're making progress. So that's a New Zealand scientist that created it some many years ago. I know the man well, and he's been very useful. So I highly recommend that everywhere. Actually, it can be downloaded online, I believe, and to make it valid for where you are. The other one is that talking about water again. We noticed that with the improvement, that the infiltration rate is the first thing that really improves, and so that's another simple, quick test. So there's my farmer plea down on the ground, just to give tools to the people on the ground. Thank you very, very much for what you're doing. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and grateful to Walter for inspiring us and making us do this, and so grateful that we had this opportunity to have all of you together, to listen to our farmers, to listen to the work that's happening. And we know that we still don't know the complete science, but that should not stop us. We move ahead, learn from our mistakes, definitely learn as we go along. We really thank Walter, thank Didi, Phil, Max, and Sophie for your excellent insights. And I would also like to thank the panelists from different countries. So grateful to them for having spent time with us to understand. And I also want to stress that we are not satisfied if it's done only in Andhra Pradesh. This is for everyone to improve and also to learn from others so that we can improve. And especially thankful to Frank, because Frank and I, we go back a very long way, 30 years to be exact. And I've learned so much from Frank, and happy to continue to be associated with Frank Roy. And I also want to thank colleagues from Rwanda, Eliane, Francisca, John from AFSA, and so many of you have given 3 hours of your time. It's really incredible. I didn't know how the time passed. I mean, I could have gone on for another 1 hour, because listening to Walter, you just have to suspend time. So that is not at all a problem. I also want to thank our NGOs and colleagues from other states who took time. We had the Direct Agriculture from Odisha. We had a very important NGO, Pradhan, who participated in this. We had economists. So this was a very rich gathering. And I'm so grateful to all of you for sharing your insights, knowledge. And I'm sure a lot of, you have given us a lot of ideas to take this forward. I'm also thankful to our staff, our district project managers, and most important, our women farmers, the women self-help groups and champion farmers. And I want to assure Emma and Didi that we need not wait for 1 year. We'll have one program exclusively with our women leaders. So Didi, let us arrange that, because it's through these women, I've learned so much, and they will explain to you. And to Emma, we can organize an event where our women champions and also we are now looking at farmer scientists. So we are trying to see how through very little equipment, we build this scientific capability in large numbers, not just 1, 10, some hundreds, thousands, so that when somebody asks for evidence, I can show evidence from 100,000 farmers. So I still, somehow we are not recognizing farmers as scientists. I think if somebody has a PhD, then only we are recognizing them as scientists.
Yeah, beauty.
So I've seen some amazing farmer scientists. There was a farmer who, when we told him to do mulching, he did only in half the land. He said, I want to test what will happen. So this is, the scientific temper is there. So can we, and that's what we have been discussing with ICRAF, to build this community of farmer scientists, and with what is the little equipment that we can provide them, so that we have this data coming from across the area. So my grateful thanks to all our farmers, farmer scientists, the women doctors. All our self-help groups are doctors, because they are seeing so much improvement in their health through this intervention. So even though I hate to lose Walter, I can go on listening to Walter for hours, but it must be a very ungodly hour for people in Australia and New Zealand. But we're so grateful to you for having spent your time with us, Walter. We owe you so much. It's incredible.
The dawn's just broken.
And we don't know how we can repay except providing service to other states and other farmer communities. So thanking everyone. We close the webinar now. Good night, good morning, and good evening.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Dawn's just broken in New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
Look at dawn in New Zealand. Hey.
Dawn in New Zealand. Okay.
A new day. A new day.
New day. Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you to all of the behind the scenes team at RYSS also. They do such a good job bringing things together.
Thank you, Vijay.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, everyone. This was amazing.
Bye-bye.
Great to see you, Eliane.
Yes. Oh, and Sophia will write soon. Didi, good to see you too. Wow, what an amazing event. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.